you guys talked, or you heard a talk from Brittany about our covenant to Jesus and Mary. Um, and I'll talk a little bit tonight about our covenant with one another. So I have my covenant framed that my big gave me, and I know the covenant, and I have it like printed out somewhere else too, but I really don't read through it as much as I should, which is a bummer, and I should do more because our covenant is so cool, and it like reads like a prayer, and just kind of shows us how to live our life. And even our covenant with one another is still something that I'm still called to live out every day, even after graduating. So when I knew I was going to talk to you guys about this, I had to like read through the covenant again, to figure out what the heck I was going to say. And the first line of our covenant with one another is something that I think that I must have just like glossed over a bunch of times and never really realized what it was saying and what that meant for us. So the first line of our covenant with one another, so the second part of our covenant, is Christ has called us into a special bond of spiritual sisterhood with one another. Um, and I don't know, like Caitlin said, I have been in since my freshman year, and I think I kind of forgot the feeling of excitement of like deciding you want to join the household and talking to the coordinator and then hearing back from the coordinator that you're able to join. And I just forgot that sense of like truly understanding that I was called to this sisterhood, and that I had prayed about it and decided that I wanted to be sisters with these girls, and I wanted to grow with them, and that I wanted to be guided by this covenant. And that like someone else, Caitlin's older sister actually was the coordinator when I was a freshman. So Caitlin's older sister like let me into household, which is cool. But just a really important reminder that like I prayed about this decision, and I decided that Stella was the best place for me, and that those girls were the girls that I wanted to be sisters with. But like Lauren, the coordinator, decided that too, and truly like God decided that too. Like God called me to that sisterhood. So I think that even that is just a very important reminder that being a part of this sisterhood is not an accident or not a mistake or not like a fluke, for any of us. And it's also not something to take lightly, because it's so special and because it's really a gift. And I think that something that I've seen at Franciscan, and a little bit also since graduating, like Caitlin said, I'm a missionary in Belize, and there are like 20 other missionaries there with me. Few of them from Franciscan, but most of them from like other schools. And a lot of them this year actually were like recent grads, like people who had graduated the same year as me. And it was very interesting to me, and like meeting these people, that it just kind of dawned on me that like what we have in Stella and the gift that we have of this sisterhood, this community, these girls, these women to like support us and try to make us holier, like that is so special. And we have something that like everyone in the world wants, which is community, which is support, which is a whole group of women, the 40 women that are in household with you, but also everyone who has come before you, and everyone who will come after you. We have a whole group of women ready and willing to pray for us when we need that, to support us when we need that, and just to love us. And that's really special, that we have that, because again, that's what everyone wants in life, is community, and is feeling known and loved by other people. And like we have the opportunity for that in Stella. And again, like people at other schools, that's what they're longing for. Not all other schools are like bad, but it's a lot easier. I think that we forget when we're at Franciscan, it's such a normal thing to join a household. So I think that we forget that even that opportunity in and of itself is so special, and we're called to that, this gift of the spiritual sisterhood. And part of why I think Stella is so special, we say it every year at like the household fair at our little booth. It's like the first thing that you say when someone comes up to you is like, well, Stella Maria is really unique because we have a covenant to Jesus and Mary, but we also have a covenant to one another. And we're the only household on campus that has that. And that is like what makes us unique in that way. But also it just like continues to blow my mind. It will never not be mind blowing to me that other households don't have that. It's like all the other households at Franciscan are wonderful and amazing and like support each other and love each other and make each other very holy. But I'm like, oh my goodness, like how do they not have a covenant to one another? Because it makes things so easy and it makes things so clear of how to be a sister. And it makes it very clear to us when we're not being a good sister. So really we have this gift of the household in general. We have this gift of the household of Stella. And that's something that we are called to, that we wanted at some point badly enough to ask the coordinator to let us in, and then she let us in, and then here we are. And that's something that God has like lined out for us to have. So with that, I think it's important to remember always in household to take that sisterhood as a gift and to not take advantage of it. I think that when I was in Stella, one of the main like weaknesses of mine that I realized was kind of pointed out by the sisterhood, not by my sisters, but that I realized through joining Stella was that I think I'm like super selfish. And I think I can be very, very selfish in my relationships, because I realized that in Stella, it was very easy for me sometimes to do the bare minimum, and to do like just enough to reach out to other people or to love other people where I felt like I was doing my part as a sister. Yeah, there were times where like someone would share something really heavy during prayer and share, and I would like shoot them a text after and be like, okay, I'm good, like I did my part to like reach out and show that I'm here. But then you forget to follow up, and that's kind of the extent of how much you were willing to love and serve them. Or like someone shoots a text in the little group me and I like say a quick Hail Mary, but then like that's it. Like I don't think to like text them individually or like follow up and see how they're doing with it. Because again, you just forget, but then it's like, okay, well, that was the extent that you were willing to love and serve them. And so I think that within the sisterhood, like our primary vocation of being at Franciscan, while you're at Franciscan, like your first job is to be a student, because that's why we're all there. But truly, like, I mean, aside from obviously getting close to God is your first job just in life always, but at Franciscan, your first job is to be a student. And I truly think that your second job is to be a sister, because that's what you wanted and that's what you joined and that's what you signed up for. So to go through Stella, to go through that sisterhood for even a second, only doing the bare minimum is so selfish and is such a waste. Because obviously we know that love doesn't like do the bare minimum. And if our love for one another is truly coming from a place of loving Jesus and trying to imitate Mary, then it'll be impossible for us to do the bare minimum. Like that love will just spill over and spill out onto those around us. And so I think that that's a really important thing that I wanted to talk to you about today, or just touch on today, like super quickly, is that we know that there are two parts of all households, that they're personal and they're communal. So they're individual, they're personal. We're meant to grow individually, personally, but they're also communal. And I think that that's why it's really cool that our covenant points out those two parts of the household, that we have our covenant to Jesus and Mary, which is our personal relationship with God. And then we have the communal aspect of households written out how it should be in our covenant, which is super cool. And so with that, it's important that in ourselves, we sort of nourish both of those aspects of household within us. So recognizing that it's personal, recognizing that it's individual, and that what that means is that prayer is like the most important thing in a household. And it's great that we have these opportunities for communal prayer. That's wonderful, but it's not enough. I know that there were times in household where like there would be weeks or like months in household where my prayer life was primarily going to Stella commitments. And I don't know how much I was really doing beyond that. Which again is like such a waste of the opportunity, because our relationship with God is the basis for our relationship with other people. And so if I want to be able to love my sisters, I need to take very, very seriously my love for God and my relationship with God. Um, and so I think that that's really important to remember, that because we have this covenant to one another, sometimes we tend to, at least when I was in household, we tend to focus like a lot on each other and on that sisterhood. And that's important, but that comes from our relationship with God, and that comes from prayer. So just making sure that we're building up a prayer life in ourselves so that we are able to love God to the best that we can, and then through that we can love others the best that we can. Um, so household is personal, it's individual, and we need to pray. We need to take very, very seriously our relationship with God, because if we're not taking that seriously, then there's no possible way that we're able to love our sisters in the way that we should, in the way that we're called to. But it's also communal, and again, as I've been saying, it's super cool, and it makes life super easy that we have like the guidelines of the sisterhood and what that should look like written out in our covenant. And like the whole second half of our covenant is just telling us like word for word, step by step, of how to be a good sister. And there's the one part where it says, our love for each other is manifested as we serve, respect, encourage, protect, and challenge one another toward holiness. And I think that that is probably like the central line of that part of our covenant, because it shows us again, literally step for step, like how to be a sister. So we're called to serve one another, and that will look different for every person and every relationship. But I think that in serving one another, what's important is to recognize that our goal in loving each other should be to love each other in the way that the other person needs to be loved, not in the way that we want to love them, or the way that we're used to loving them, or the way that we're comfortable with loving them. But I think that in household, the best way that we can serve one another is really, really trying to get to know each other, but also to get to know, like, how does this specific girl want to be loved? And how does this specific girl want me to reach out to her? Or if she's having a tough time, like, how can I serve her by reaching out to her or calling her on in a way that she's going to respond well to? And we can only do that if we really seek to get to know each other. So I think that our service of one another comes from a place of trying to know each other deeply, as like individual human beings that have individual needs. And then we're called to respect one another. I think that the biggest ways that I found were difficult for me in household to respect one another, was tended to come from places of like holy conversations about how can we address the situation, turning into gossip, which is like the least respectful thing that you could do to another person, to talk about them when they can't defend themselves, or to talk about someone in a way that they don't deserve to be talked about. And again, I think a lot of times that comes from a place of wanting to have like a holy conversation about how to address an issue. But disrespecting our sisters through the way that we talk to them or talk about them is failing to live our covenant. And so I found that that was sometimes a challenge for me in household, of living out the covenant, of respecting my sisters. And also I think prayer and share is a big one too. I think that prayer and share is a really, really awesome opportunity to respect our sisters. There aren't many other times in life where you'll get the opportunity to just kind of like air out your heart and just get off your chest whatever you need prayers for, whatever you're struggling with. And I think the most disrespectful thing we could do to our sisters is to like not care, to not really pay attention, to think like they're talking too long, I just want them to be quiet so I can go to bed, or to think like this is too heavy, like I don't want to hear this stuff. I think that prayer and share is so awesome because it's such a unique time that, again, like you will never get again in life, probably ever.